This is a question from someone who had cancer, and the question is, what do I need to do not to get cancer again? Now that is a very, very complex question that has even more complex answers. But to simplify it, I have written very much about the subject in Cancer is Not a Disease, it's a survival mechanism, and that is basically my answer. You don't need to fight it or to desperately protect from getting cancer again. Cancer develops when there is a need for it, only when there is a need for it. And cancer is a complex healing mechanism that develops and sets in when there is a requirement to get rid of a large amount of toxins in the body that have accumulated in some areas more than others. And when these areas become suffocated, when toxins develop and can no longer be removed properly and readily, then the body has to undergo certain cell mutations where the genes will reprogram the cell so that the cell can survive in this more dense and encapsulated, isolated environment. And the body will develop new blood vessels to support that cell because that cell, the cancer cell, has very important functions. It is eventually capable of absorbing, and like a vacuum cleaner, absorbing toxins from the cellular environment or extracellular environment that then can be broken down with the help of certain microorganisms like viruses, bacteria and fungi, which are prevalent in every cancer cell. Each cancer cell accumulates these germs to a point where eventually these germs, there could be candida bacteria, could be TB bacteria, and other infectious germs that will massively infect the entire tumor that has evolved. Now, cancer, as the book suggests, is not a disease but a survival mechanism. The cancer itself is part of the healing program that the body is allowing to happen, and the body is supporting that to happen if the need arises. We now know that all tumors have at least, or are made up of at least 60% immune cells, white cells. White cells are typically the ones that make sure that cancer doesn't occur. So if you naturally turn over 30 billion cells per day, typically 1% of these cells are cancer cells, and for that the white cells, they find them, they drill holes into the cells and kill these cells. So that's the natural way for the body to deal with it. But in the cancer that we call a disease, it's a very, very different story. The body recognizes that these cancer cells are actually doing the body a favor. They are not there to harm the body, but they allow the body to get through a crisis where temporarily the body's functions are subdued, suppressed, disturbed, often because of psychological problems, the death of a family member, a mother, father, or a divorce, which forces the body to rely on producing extra cells in order to get through this very difficult period in their lives. Because of this stress, there are lots of more factors like hormones produced, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and many functions are subdued. And so during that time, building extra cells that take over some of these extra functions is very much in favor of the body. And so when the person goes through that stressful period in life, whether it's physical, diet-related, ionizing radiation from mammograms or CAT scans or X-rays, or exposure to carcinogens, toxins in the environment, mercury from fillings, accumulation of aluminum from vaccines, and other poisons. So when the body is exposed to these harsh things that suppress functions in the body necessarily has to take recourse to survival mechanisms, and it will do that. And so the cancer is an outlet for the body. It's like encapsulating toxins in a particular area, and hoping that the person is capable of going through the crisis and changing their lives and diet and lifestyle, so that the body can then break down the tumor. Before the body breaks down a cancer, it typically grows very fast. And this should not be misconstrued that there is something wrong, that the cancer is growing out of control. There is no out of control growth. The cancer grows to the point that it needs to, and typically the extra growth is not necessarily that you produce more cancer cells, but that actually the number of microorganisms and fluid that is retained in the tumor increases to the point that now there are enough microorganisms, TB bacteria and Candida bacteria, that then can decompose the entire tumor. And this leads to a massive infection, which typically goes hand in hand with a high fever, and the high fever shows that there is a proper, sufficient immune response to deal with the cancer. If, however, a doctor comes in and says, oh, we have to reduce your fever, it's getting too high, then of course the healing is stopped and the cancer cannot be decomposed. If it is allowed to take its course, then the tumor is decomposed within 24 to 36 hours, and it ends up as bits and pieces of proteins in the urine, and the person will urinate at least 20-30 times a day. That goes on for maybe 2 or 3 days, and then the tumor is nowhere to be found. So there's a natural progression for a cancer unless it becomes severely obstructive, like in the throat or in the brain, or in places that could interfere with the circulation of the blood to the heart, for example. Then cancers are actually very beneficial. Many people, after they have broken down their own cancers, they have also recovered from many other illnesses they may have been suffering from. There is always victory after the war in this case, but the war doesn't need to be a fighting war. It has to be one that is allowed, that the body is allowed to heal itself, to continue its healing, and not to be stopped by fear. When you have a diagnosis, your body contracts. It's like you're completely curling up. You're frightened for your life. This death fright can paralyze most of the functions in the body, such as digestion. There is no way under death fright that a person has the capability of digesting any food. The food will literally pass through undigested. You may at best get diarrhea, or you may throw up, but there is no way that the food can be digested. This leads to wasting. That means the cells in the body don't get their nutrients and they start wasting away. Wasting is the major cause of death among cancer patients. People are wasting away. This has nothing to do with the cancer. This has more to do with the death fright that is associated with the cancer. Cancer patients, when they're being diagnosed with cancer, they cannot sleep even. They are worrying. The brain is keeping them up all night so that they can possibly try to figure this out, find a solution, because under threat, the person is not allowed to sleep. It's a survival mechanism. It's a natural biological protective mechanism to make sure that under threat you don't fall asleep. So when this happens, your interpretation is that the cancer is something bad that you have to fight, that you have to destroy. Then you are wasting away. You are damaging the body. You may eventually hold on to fluid. because the body can no longer transport fluid properly through the kidneys. So the kidneys shut down, and the body is holding on to fluid, and you gain weight. So you're wasting away while you're gaining weight. It's a paradox, but that's very, very common. That's what you find also when people take chemotherapy. Many of them, they start swelling up, become very rounded, just like when people take steroid hormones. So once again, there is no need to be frightened of cancer. People had stage 4 cancers, and they were given like 10 days to live, and they lived another 20 years. So there is no such thing as an incurable cancer unless the person who has it believes in it, and he doubts that he can do anything about it. And that makes a big, big difference, because if you are hopeful and you are trusting that your body can heal, the whole energy is shifting. You're no longer in that mode where you cannot sleep, you cannot digest food. So your body is actually gaining strength again, is recovering, is rejuvenating while the cancer is growing. That's why you find some people who have a serious tumor in the body, they look great and they look radiant, and it doesn't seem to bother them, and they will never die from that. Whereas someone who is diagnosed with a cancer, and this has happened many times, even though they were like given a couple of years to live, they died the next day following the diagnosis. So it can be very shocking to have that, and I recommend you would read the book. It's Cancer is Not a Disease, it's a Survival Mechanism, because it takes the fear away. It allows the person to find out what cancer really is, why it behaves in a certain way, and what it can do for us, not against us. So that's an important piece of information that I think every cancer patient should have. Cancer doesn't have to come back. It's not like you had it and it miraculously pops up again because we didn't get it all. We cannot get rid of cancer altogether. We can have 5 billion cancer cells. That's the point when it can be recognized as a small tumor. But if you take chemotherapy, radiation, or you cut some out, you will never completely get rid of all of it. You may get it down to 1 billion, and then there's no sign of a tumor, maybe for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then boom, it's back. It has reached 5 billion again. It doesn't mean that the cancer was ever gone. It's just it was cut back, just like you cut back weeds, and then they don't seem to be there for a while. But then the weeds will start growing again. Why would they grow again? Why would the cancer reoccur? Because as long as the root causes have not been tackled, if we have not taken care of what causes the cancer, which is clearly outlined in the book, then we obviously have to recreate the same cancer again and again. And we should work with the body, not against it, because sending messages to the body that something horrible is attacking it and it's eating it up is a signal that the body cannot take lightly. Mind and body are intimately connected. When we have thoughts, feelings, emotions of feeling attacked, it's similar to the fight or flight response, where it shuts down all the major systems. The immune system immediately becomes suppressed during the moment of fight or flight. If we are constantly under threat, then our immune system is subdued all the time. And there's just not very much of a chance for the body to clear out toxins, to heal itself when the immune system is paralyzed. So the real healing is much, much more simple than it may sound. It's the simplest things: taking care of one's heart, emotional heart, loving oneself, caring for oneself, accepting one's weaknesses, faults, mistakes, which is very important in any kind of healing. That's more important than what you do against a cancer or for a cancer. It's more what you do for yourself, accepting, loving yourself, and that sends messages to the cells in the body that cancer may no longer be needed. Much, much better for a healthy life and a joyful life than constantly having to be on edge, thinking, oh my God, what if the cancer comes back again? Thank you, and hope you're having a wonderful, beautiful life.